for joining us today. Welcome to the Chai Academy. I am Rabbi Sachs, Yaakov Sachs. If you have static or your computer is slowing down or it freezes, it will only be for a minute or so, and then please God, everything should straighten up. Just a little quirk in our system. So we're in the middle of this course, Jewish Ethics and Beliefs, and yesterday we had a fascinating class on cruelty to animals, which was a very eye-opening class. It was for me as well, to be honest. And today's class is completely different. And once again, each class is self-contained. So today's class is honoring one's parents. Shalom Eileen. Honoring one's parents. So it's actually surprising that it's a biblical command, because you would think it comes as a natural, a natural thing. Your parents, God, honor your parents, and but the Torah says clearly, not once but twice, it talks about honor one's parents, and other places it talks about hitting parents, cursing parents, etc. And that's because I think the Torah recognizes the fragility and the frailty of the human mind, and how the good is interred with the bones, and people do not honor, respect parents. We'll talk about it later, but the Torah doesn't mention love at all, right? Nothing. No love, just honor. Another place is awe. So anyway, you would think that it's conventional wisdom, and that we honor our parents. They are, after all, our parents. Took care of us, changed our diapers, and reared us and dragged us up. For some, and for the most part, we're here and we're alive and well because of them. Everybody has neurosis, so it's every Jewish person has neurosis, so it's you can't use that as an argument for why we shouldn't honor our parents. So why does the Torah mention it? Why does the Torah mention it if it makes sense logically? The Torah is while the Torah is commonsensical, but why mention it as an additional? It's two of the 613 mitzvahs. So I'll tell you something interesting. It's not always common sense, because even religiously, not that I'm a connoisseur, but there is a line in the New Testament that it talks about somebody who wants to go to requesting permission to go home and bury his father, and he was told to stay and let the dead bury the dead. Now, if that's not alienating, what is? So now we know Christianity is all about the family, embracing the family, etc. But it's interesting. Its origins were not necessarily based on this story. And there's a couple of other instances where it's mentioned. But and by the way, cultures are not necessarily respectful of parents either. While we know Nazism was very pro-family, the communists were very pro-family, they also inculcated the children to rat on their parents, right? To let the government know when a parent is out of line, when a parent is taking a different political view. And in fact, in Russia, the equivalent to what we have called the Boy Scouts, you actually had to take an oath in order to say that you will put Mother Russia in front of your family. It was part and parcel of the oath. Now, cults, right? They all tell you don't go near your parents, right? Stay away from your parents. Your parents are evil. So I guess the Torah had to say it, that no matter what, no matter how you feel, you're in a cult, you're not in a cult, you're in Russia, you're not in Russia, you're in Nazi Germany or not Nazi Germany, you gotta honor, respect your parents. Perhaps that's the why, because there are cultures alive, maybe not well, that insist that they come first and your parents become second. And I will tell you, there was a case, a very, very famous case in communist Russia, where this this Boy Scout, in Russian Boy Scout, he took the oath, and he informed on his father. He informed what was his father's sin against the communist government, was that his father had hidden extra bags of rice. So he let them know that even though there was everybody had to have a certain amount, you couldn't have this, couldn't have that his father defied a law, probably for the kid's benefit, by the way, defied a law just to survive, I assume, and he told the government that his father violated the law. His father was taken, arrested, and executed. I mean, insane. We're talking about insane. I mean, this was communism. They thought nothing about killing people. So this guy had a couple of extra bags of Uncle Ben's. You're a dead man. Now, this kid, his name was Pavlik. The statues, I saw a statue of him in Russia. That's how I know about this. So when I was in Russia, so there's this kid Pavlik, right? And I forget his last name. Maroza, something like that. So this Pavlik tattletaled on his father, and his father was executed. His father's brother was so angry at Pavlik for this heinous crime of getting his father executed, because his father had a couple bags of rice, that the uncle, his father's brother, killed Pavlik. And because the uncle killed Pavlik, there are statues of Pavlik as an honor that he stood up and did the right thing by informing on his parents, and he died a martyr. You and I, I think anybody watching this particular class would say, well, that's insane. But, the Torah is above and beyond cultures. The Torah is nuances. Communists come and go. The Romans come and go. The Greeks come and go. Anything and everything, right? The Spanish, the great Spanish monarchy came and went. United Kingdom, my goodness, they ruled most of the world. Alexander the Great, Napoleon, they all came and went. The Torah is not fickle in that way. The Torah is a steadiness, completely steady. It doesn't change at all, no matter which culture you live in. So if you live in a culture of honoring and respecting your parents and fearing or being awe of one's parents, or not, it doesn't matter. So this is possibly it's a theory of mine as to why the Torah does mention it, because the Torah knows that we're going to live in bizarre times at times, and therefore we have to do what's right regardless. And if God would just suggest it or remain silent, then we'd have no direction. But so therefore God puts it in black and white, so to speak, and is part and parcel of what ethics, Jewish ethics, stands for: honoring one's parents. Now, Judaism, everybody knows, it's a very family-oriented. Yes, we fight, but we're a very family. I mean, think of the times we get together, etc. And by the way, we're the butt of jokes, about the three Jewish women sitting on a bench in Boca, and one says, my son is amazing. My son, he just for my birthday, he got me a limousine and a driver, and wherever I want to go, and he got this for indefinite amount of time. Incredible expense. So the next woman says, well, he got me, my son, my Jewish son, got me a chef to live in my house, and at my whim. So if yours costs 50,000, and mine cost 100,000. So my son is definitely better. The next woman says, that's nothing at all. She goes, my son, he found the most expensive therapist in Manhattan, $2,000 an hour. And my son goes twice a week for 2 hours. And who does my son talk about? Me. So that's a butt of jokes of Jewish neurosis. But yeah, in Judaism we're a tight bunch. We have a family dynamic. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Of course. Are the families that dysfunctional? Of course. But we're not talking about exceptions, right? Now, it's interesting to note that as Jews, we view fellow Jews as family as well, and maybe that's why we fight. Maybe we fight because there are squabbles in families, and the Jewish family is no different. So we're family. We place a lot of emphasis on the family. Family comes first. And by the way, that's a Jewish concept as well, that family comes first. And many of us make that mistake, myself included. When you're young and have a new family, but you're trying to make ends meet and new living, your family doesn't always come first, and that does not make it right. So one has to always remember at all times that family does come first. Now, in one place in the Decalogue, in the Ten Commandments, number 5, it talks about kabed es avicha v'es imecha. Honor your father and your mother. In Leviticus, in another verse, it talks about that your mother and your father you shall fear, and you should keep my Sabbath. So it talks about honor. It talks about fearing. We prefer to use the word awe than shake in front of our parents, and but it doesn't use love. No love. Not one place does it say love your parents. Honor, yes, respect is honor. Awe, fear, but not love. And I know there's a famous singer that says, what's love got to do with it? But you would think you would have to love. So I think there's a couple of answers. One is that the Torah can't command an emotion. It's not easy for the Torah to command an emotion, and especially when you have this intimate connection with your parents, a lifelong connection. You cannot command love. When you have an intimate connection for years and years and years, you cannot command an emotion. You can command do the right thing. You can command say the right thing. You can demand that, but you can't demand love, right? It's just not. And the Torah recognizes it. You cannot demand love. And by the way, not every time can you love your parents, right? If a parent, I've been asked, what about an abusive parent, right? If you have do you have to? What's your obligation to an abusive parent? Your parent was abusive growing up. Do you have to honor them? We know we don't have to love them. Made that clear. Do you have to honor? Do you have to respect, etc.? And the answer is that the answer is that we have to do what we can to honor our parents. So in the case of an abusive person, call your parent once a week or once every 2 weeks. Have a very short conversation, and realize that your parent is probably ill. And you don't have to fraternize because your parent is ill. But you do have to honor and respect it. If that means making a phone call, you make a phone call. But you definitely don't have to put yourself in the position of being abused again. That you don't have to do. You never have to do that. So, birthday, send a birthday card. That's respect, right? Special occasion or whatever. You could send them a bottle of wine once in a while, but you don't have to you don't have to fraternize, especially if they're triggering, and especially if they're still abusive. You just don't have to. You're not obligated to. The question that just popped up: aren't we commanded happiness on Purim? Yeah, and so that's a rabbinical command, and the rabbis talk about it, and they say that if you need to you read the Megillah in order to make you happy, and some people actually say a l'chaim. They say have a little bit of schnapps, a little bit of very very often they serve scotch on that day to reduce your inhibitions, etc. And maybe make not so miserable. So you're commanded to be happy on Purim. You're commanded to be happy on Sukkot. That's biblical. So here the Torah commands an emotion, but the happiness entails that you take off work. The happiness entails that you sit in the sukkah and you have a delicious meal. Should you try and work on your happiness? We should all try and work on our happiness at all times. I know this fellow that works on his happiness by taking MDMA. He says that the Molly that he takes increases his happiness. Now, obviously, that's anathema to Judaism because it's anathema to law. But here, this fellow is in pursuit of happiness. Are we commanded to be joyous on Shabbat? I guess we are, but you're commanded to eat a delicious meal on Shabbat. You're commanded to rest from mundanity on Shabbat. Happiness per se, I don't know if you violate Shabbat if you're not feeling it. So what entails honor? How do you honor practically? How does one honor their parents? So I think Code of Jewish Law, it talks about it. It talks about it at great length, and says that you're not allowed to sit. A child is not allowed to sit in the designated parent's seat, whether it's at the kitchen, the living room, the dining room, the bedroom. If that is designated for your parent, you're not allowed to sit in their chair. It's interesting. I've done a lot wrong, but my kids, whenever they want to sit in a chair, I usually sit there. They ask me, "Ta, do you mind if I sit?" So that's what I think. That's what it says. That if you're gonna sit, you should ask. So that's honor. Honor is that you don't sit in their seat. You recognize that it's not. And too many, by the way, this is fundamental. I believe this is fundamental. A parent-child relationship is not a parallel relationship. They're not your friend. You can be friendly, but they're not your friend. It's a serial relationship. Parents are on top, children are at the bottom. And any parent, and I see this, and it's really any parent that basically takes their cue from their child instead of the other way around is destined to have a hard time, destined to have a hard life. I see too many parents trying to be friends with their children, and it's not the case, because if you do that, your child cannot honor you as a parent. The child will skip with you as a friend. The child will laugh with you and go to watch a movie with you, or go to go into the whirlpool together with you in your backyard. But so one has to be careful. So you honor your parents, and you recognize that they are your parent. So recognition is huge in this, because they're not your equal. And no, it's true. When they get older and the senility sets in, etc., it's very difficult. And by the way, this is one of the hardest mitzvahs to honor and respect one's parents, because sometimes, you first, parents live. We all live longer now, and it's not easy. It's not easy. Honor would also be siding with a parent. So if your parent, your mother or father, has a factory, and the employees put a big rat outside the factory, and they picket outside, you're forbidden, whether you agree with the. It doesn't matter whether you agree with the them picketing or not, whether you understand what they want. You're not allowed to picket. Biblically, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. Your parent is arguing with somebody. You cannot take their side. You're not allowed to. You have to be quiet. If you disagree with your parent, you have to say it quietly. And in fact, the Talmud tells us how to disagree. It says, Father, doesn't the Talmud teach this and this? Like in a question. Doesn't the Torah say this and this? As opposed to saying, you're dead wrong, man. You're off base because it says in the Torah and you're just wrong. That's not honorable. So there's even ways to have a disagreement with one's parents. The Code of Jewish Law talks about, are you allowed to see one's parents naked? Right? Are you allowed to go into a pool, or is that becoming? Is that right? If you can go into a whirlpool, or you're going to, I don't know, a nudist beach. I have no idea. Are you allowed to? And many commentators say you're not allowed to see your parents naked. You're not allowed to see your teachers naked, because once again, it's not a parallel relationship. That also is a serial relationship. So respect, once again, is not right. Is absolutely, of course, that's how you honor them, by making sure they're buried properly, and by the way, because of this honor, if one's parents say, I have it in my will to get cremated, you're allowed to defy their last will and testament. You're allowed to. Not only are you allowed to, you're encouraged to, because it's not honorable to be cremated. It's the wrong thing, and therefore you're allowed to defy it. And I tell people all the time, don't listen. Don't listen. Just don't cremate them. Don't listen. Don't worry about it. Where they are now, they understand, but do not listen to them. So you can't side with someone else in an argument, and you have to try and if they do something wrong, try and correct them, but almost like in a third person. Doesn't the Torah say, as opposed to you should know about, etc. Also, honor, that would probably be more respect. Honor would be you have to feed them, you have to clothe them, you have to make sure they have proper care. You have to, if they need to get to the doctor and they can't do it, you have to make sure that you arrange for them to get there. All this is honor. You have to return their phone calls. You have to visit them once in a while. You have to be there for them. And you're not allowed to shirk your responsibility as a child. And this is true, as we said earlier, even if somebody shirks their responsibility as a parent, you still have to be mindful that you are biblically obligated to honor and respect your parents. Once again, unless they're dangerous, unless they're abusive. And you can it's okay to put safeguards in measure. I know, for example, this family, this person was not brought up observant, and became observant, and he had children, and visiting his grandparents, and his grandparents were talking about, what are you learning in school? So they said, we're talking all about creation. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the grandparents said, creationism is malarkey. We believe in Darwinism, evolution. There's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as creation. Come on, it's childish. And what the child, in other words, the father of these kids that the parents were talking to, is saying, Mom and Dad, you cannot talk to my kids' religion. I'm sorry, but it is, I'm bringing them up in a certain way, and please, I'm asking you, talk about sports, talk about, anything, talk about, bird watching, or what's the best way to crack a nut, but do not talk to them about religion. And you can put in that safeguard. You can put in that safeguard, and the person did. And the parents had to abide. So yeah, it gets tricky. And years ago, we had this. Where I live in Dix Hills, and there were a number of children who grew up, and they became more observant than their parents. And all of a sudden, I find myself with about 15 families who have an observant child, sibling, etc. And they're all having a hard time with it. So I made a support group, and to tackle hard questions. The kids were not there. The observant ones were not there. It was just for the parents. And we discussed, sometimes when they become observant, the child can go all the way to the right, become extreme. And I would let the parents know where the child is right according to Jewish law, and where the child is completely off base, and where the child can make an effort more than is doing so. So, for example, one child said, I can never, ever, ever come to you for a meal because you're not kosher. That's not true. We can figure it out. We can work on it. You can come to them for a meal. We can figure it out. And the child, if you want to do the respectful and honorable thing, then you need to work it out. Absolutely need to work it out. You can't just say, I can no longer come to you. Right? And if you have to visit them, if it's a special day and it's a Shabbat, and they don't live near a synagogue, etc., don't go to synagogue that Shabbat. Once every 3 years, go to synagogue. So you don't. Figure it out. Right? It's do the respectful thing. Use your common sense. Right? And don't use religion as a division between you and your family members. On the contrary, use it to inspire and make your loved ones thankful that you have found a certain happiness and peace. But don't make it a miserable experience. So this is sort of what I was trying to do, and with some modicum of success, but not totally. And there's a saying in Yiddish, a Kopf kann man nicht aufstellen. You cannot give somebody brains. If they don't have brains, they don't have brains. If they don't have common sense, they don't have common sense. So you can talk to these parents, talk to these children, and the children don't get it, or the parents don't get it. What could you do? So they're going to have a miserable existence. But if your goal, keep your eye on the prize, and your ultimate goal is to have a relationship, you can figure this out. You don't even need me to do it. You can bounce things off me, but you don't need me to do it. And the onus is on the child. Because the child, once again, is lower on the food chain than the parent, regardless of their huge undertaking of observance and the brilliance and the most beautiful lifestyle. They're still lower than the parents. And they still have certain obligation to the parents. And therefore, the onus is on the children, to make this work. So we I guess this is it for now. We reached the half-hour mark, but tomorrow we'll talk about what happens if there's fundamental disagreements, with the parents. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about our spouses vis-a-vis our parents. It should be the next class we have will be about that. If you have any questions like you did today, you can ask it here, or you can contact me, rabbi@thechaicenter.com. Please feel free to go to the Chai Academy. The best way to do it is thechaicenter.com/academy, or YouTube or Spotify. Elaine, if you give me an address in Williamsburg, I will give you, I will give you a synagogue close by. It's probably North 6th or North 4th, I imagine your son is. All right. Be well and God bless. Thank you once again for tuning in. Please feel free to share this video. I think it's an important one. Parent and children relationship. Be well.